The sky appears to be infinite, and in fact, it is. However, our atmosphere, which often seems to us to be as infinite as the sky, is just a thin layer that encircles the Earth. The boundless expanse of the sky can mislead us into believing that the atmosphere is just as infinitely immense. This is easy to understand from another perspective. We need only move away from the Earth. The early astronauts had the privilege of discovering how the gases that surround the Earth form a little blue-tinted halo just a few kilometers tall. From outer space, our atmosphere looks rather modest, and it's easy to understand that it's not by any means infinite. The gases that living beings breathe scarcely rise more than 4 kilometers up into the sky. That is to say, any major street in a big city such as Paris, Madrid, or London extends far longer. Despite appearances, the breathable air on our planet is finite. Our atmosphere forms a delicate sheath where the gases that make life possible accumulate and also play an active role in determining the planet's climate. The proportion of gases is important not just for breathing, but also in order to filter out the sun's rays and to keep the planet's temperature constant. Scientists have discovered that over the last few decades, the composition of the atmosphere in every part of the globe has started to change. The reason for this is that carbon dioxide is more abundant each year. Increased levels of carbon dioxide change the proportion of gases in the atmosphere, and this affects how the climate on Earth is regulated. Why do these strange changes occur? The reason is easy to understand. Human beings have been spewing enormous quantities of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere for the past 2 centuries, ever since the Industrial Revolution began. Combustion of coal, wood, and oil liberates the carbon molecules which have gradually accumulated in the air. Carbon dioxide not only absorbs the heat that the sun sends us, it also absorbs solar radiation reflected by the Earth's surface towards outer space. This effect is known as the greenhouse effect, and it inevitably affects our climate, which is becoming warmer at an ever faster rate. Everywhere on the planet, global warming has a direct effect on the water cycle. Heat transforms the water cycle, and these changes have unpredictable effects on every ecosystem that depends on water. The effects are extremely varied. although every year research detects them with greater precision. Scientific publications have amassed plenty of data about the impact of climate change. One example of this impact is the golden toad, which has become a ghastly symbol of the changes in our climate. This was the first animal to become extinct due to global warming. The last one was seen in 1989. Research has shown that in the last few years, the fog in its habitat had evaporated due to high temperatures. This entire species, which lived only in a tiny corner of Costa Rica, became extinct because of a prolonged lack of water and humidity. Amphibians are, in fact, quite vulnerable to this changing situation. A drastic decrease in the number of amphibians and their species has been detected on every continent, even in parts of the primeval forest. In the tropical forests of Central America, up to 2/3 of amphibians disappeared in the 1980s and 1990s. The culprit in this disappearance is a skin fungus that is usually inoffensive to amphibians. However, in warmer climes, the fungus mutates into a more aggressive variety that can become lethal. Biologists have concluded that tropical frogs and toads are disappearing at the same rate that the region's climate is changing. All over the planet, amphibians are quickly becoming infected with fungi, and every day, more amphibians are added to the list of endangered species. Not even the most remote and isolated tropical rainforests are safe from climate change. This ecosystem is very ancient and has always maintained homogeneous environmental conditions with constant humidity and temperature. Life has multiplied and diversified in the tropical rainforest more so than on any other spot on the face of planet Earth. The animals that live here are not used to such fast-paced change. They thrive under very concrete environmental conditions, and they have virtually no ability to adapt to changes in the climate. A temperature increase of 1 or 2 degrees can mean the annihilation of hundreds of species of insects, lizards, tropical turtles, or frogs. Birds living in the mountains of the fog forest have also begun to notice the changes around them. Every year, there are fewer clouds and fog to provide humidity. The fog forests are progressively being pushed up into higher altitudes, and their occupants are losing their territories. The changing environment attracts new species, and some original inhabitants, such as the quetzal, have found new competitors and predators, such as the toucan. In just a few years, some species have become extremely rare and may soon disappear. While we hardly even notice the rainforest's agony, our newspapers feature the demise of polar ecosystems on their front pages day after day. The news media often talk about the disappearance of mountain glaciers, or about how the Antarctic and Arctic ice sheets are melting with every passing day. Glaciers and polar ice are the most important source of fresh water on Earth, and their lower temperatures are directly affecting climate the world over, generating currents of cold water and air. Scientists are alarmed by how quickly the polar ice caps are disappearing. Since were the ice to melt completely, this would make the sea level rise by several dozen meters. The absence of ice at the poles also means that large populations of mollusks, crustaceans, algae, and fish will disappear, and that marine ecosystems will thus be profoundly altered. Experts have fixed their gazes on changes in polar environments and now warn us about the startling symptoms some animals are beginning to display. Such is the case with penguins. Almost all penguin species are living on the razor's edge. In just 25 years, some penguin colonies have seen their population dwindle by 60%. The reasons are obvious. Penguins are starving to death because their food supply of crustaceans and fish is disappearing as the water in the Antarctic becomes warmer. What's more, the melting ice provokes changes in the places they inhabit that make reproductive chores and feeding the young a lot more difficult. If the current trends continue, in the next few decades, 3/4 of the world's penguin population will have disappeared. It isn't all that easy to understand the effects of climate change on living beings. The sea turtle's case is worthy of a Sherlock Holmes novel. For years, conservationists have been worried about the sea turtle's future. These reptiles are extremely ancient creatures, and they play an essential role in keeping marine ecosystems healthy. There are only 8 species of turtles spread out over the warmer oceans, and most of them are part of the long list of creatures that are in danger of disappearing. The reasons are varied, and they are all the work of humans. Indiscriminate hunting, pollution, waste, abandoned fishing nets, destruction of the coastline, and harvesting of their eggs. The list, though long, is still incomplete. Natural reserves were created to prevent their extinction by protecting the beaches where they nest. Construction is not allowed here, and the nests are guarded from would-be thieves. The turtles are tagged and monitored in order to learn about their habits and the places they inhabit. However, all these efforts may turn out to be futile. There's a new factor that's compromising Chelonia's chances of survival. Experts were shocked to confirm that almost all the turtles now born are female. This is producing an alarming and inexplicable imbalance between the sexes. The absence of males is a new problem as difficult to solve as it is to understand. This strange case was hard to solve, but biologists managed to figure out what was causing this. It turned out to be a result of climate change. A turtle's sex is determined by the temperature of the egg as the embryo develops. Eggs that are laid in cooler areas will be male, while those in warmer areas will be female. In the last few years, the rising temperatures in the sea and in the air has created a very warm environment that makes all turtle eggs produce little female turtles. The turtles lead us to discover another place also threatened by the effects of global warming. This is the richest and most varied ecosystem in the reef, the coral reef. A significant part of all the living beings on the planet lives here. In fact, it's believed that the coral reefs are home to over 500,000 species, which is about 25% of all the species in our oceans. This ancient ecosystem is also extremely vulnerable. The coral reef's area has been decimated by the environmental conditions that human beings have created at sea. Overfishing and pollution have devastated vast areas, but the most serious danger this ecosystem is facing is the increase in temperatures. Coral reefs can live only within a narrow range of temperatures. They never survive at less than 18 degrees Celsius, but they thrive best between 23 and 25 degrees. With warmer temperatures, the algae that usually live inside the coral are being expelled, and this is having a tremendous impact on the reefs. When this happens, coral loses its colors and turns white. Without algae living inside, coral is even more fragile and vulnerable to attack by potentially fatal diseases. This is what's happened to some reefs in the Caribbean, where certain types of coral, such as elkhorn and staghorn coral, are already on the list of endangered species. This phenomenon of coral turning white is happening in every sea, and it is clear proof that the water is in fact getting warmer. If the coral reefs die, hundreds of thousands of marine species that need them to live and reproduce will also disappear. This would mean the total collapse of an ecosystem that millions of human beings also depend on for their survival. birds have also begun to suffer from these changes in the coastal ecosystems. Experts estimate that in just a few decades, the Earth's temperature will have risen by 2 degrees. When that happens, nearly 40% of all European birds and over 70% of the birds in Australia will become extinct. Wading birds are very sensitive to changes in the environment because they travel thousands of kilometers between their breeding and wintering grounds. Their lives depend on the stability of many natural enclaves, and they are very vulnerable to changes in these landscapes. That is why they're considered sentinels of climate change. To date, the wading bird population worldwide has already dropped close to 50% due to the relatively slight changes global warming has already produced in coastal ecosystems. The near future looks rather bleak. Flooding, as well as droughts, will occur more and more often, and all 5 continents will suffer their consequences. Climate change will have turned water into an executioner, a harbinger of disaster. Changes in the water cycle are already noticeable around the planet, and ecosystems everywhere suffer their effects. Scientific research has confirmed that the problem can be counted by tens of thousands, and it's not just plants and animals. Human beings, who after all are responsible for solving a problem we ourselves have created, will also be counted among the victims of these generalized changes in the climate. And we alone have the solution.